going to be a different video, which I explained if you watch any of my other ones. I'm going to go through an entire chapter from my book. It's a chapter of my album, Animated Eden. This is the book cover that I made. It's got 8 songs, I believe. Before I get to the song lyrics, I'm going to read the preface that I wrote. The preface just kind of explains what the songs kind of deal with, what the concept deals with. It's a weird concept. I wrote most of these ideas in 2020, and the reason I titled it Animated Eden was because I was kind of watching a bunch of old cartoons around that time. You know, I go into my COVID experiences more in my book, so I don't want to talk about everything. But yeah, I was dealing with some weird stuff, some anxious stuff, some paranoia, just complete mental breakdown pretty much. And I had a surge of albums that came out around that period. Not everything was good, but Animated Eden became one of those in the middle of that post 2020 surge of inspiration that I experienced. Now, I think I mentioned before how I formed these book covers, album covers. I use the same image for, like, if I put this on Bandcamp when I actually record the songs one day. I also have a similar image like this in the shape of like an album cover. This is a picture of one of my photographs from the Magic Gardens in Philadelphia, and probably more than half of my book covers were photographs that I took at the Magic Gardens. And originally, I was just going to use the photographs because the artwork at the Magic Gardens, if you've ever heard of that place or been there, it's just filled with folk art all over the place. It's just one of the craziest, most surreal places you could go visit. And so originally, I was just going to use photographs that I took there. 2018, I went there right after the Eagles won the Super Bowl, and it just kind of blew my mind. I took like 200 pictures that day, and so almost all my album covers came from the Magic Gardens, where I was manipulating my photographs into collages and just weird stuff, merging pictures together. I would paint something on a digital program and then combine it with the photographs and then spend hours and hours making it look cool. And I had no idea what I was doing, like absolutely no idea. I just taught myself a way to make cool art, at least I think it's cool, using the resources I had. And I think I did a pretty cool job. I made 54 plus album covers, like, because I have other ones too that I haven't used yet for anything. So it took me months and months of doing that. Like, it was a really big part of this process, the visual art side of things, because album covers are so important to catch people's eyes right away, to let people know kind of what to expect within the album. The album art, I don't want to say it's as important as the music, but it is like almost the first impression you get from an artist of what's this album going to be like. Like Stevie Wonder's Inner Vision versus like his 80s stuff, which was more like B101 love songs. That, you can tell the difference. This is going to be a spiritual album with some weird stuff and funky stuff. So album art has always been very important to me ever since I was a kid. I talk about it in my book, but I was a part of the Dookie and the Smash generation. Punk rock invaded the suburbs, and those were the two that sold like 20 billion records. And I was more a Smash guy, like when I was like, I don't know, 12, 13, maybe younger. I painted like the album cover of Smash, and I hung it on my wall. It was like the coolest thing. I wish I would have saved it. Like I thought I did a pretty good job actually. Like, I'm not a painter. I never really had experience with paint. So even when I was young, like I saw that Offspring Smash album cover, and it was like I need to get this, and also thankfully the music was just as good. Like I still love that album. So it took me a long time to find a style to create cool art, and I thank the Magic Gardens more than anything else. Like right now, I'm trying to sell my screenplays and stuff. It sounds kind of stupid, but I'm selling them on eBay because I don't know what else to do. So I have a couple of my screenplays on eBay, and if by some magical chance I sell a screenplay on eBay, I'm going to give a good portion of the money, maybe like 10% of it, to the Magic Gardens or other charities that helped me get to this point. Because without the Magic Gardens, I still would have made album art, but it would have taken me a lot longer, and I wouldn't have had anything to start from. Because I also developed like a digital painting style eventually that I still am working on. Like I'm not a professional visual artist. Again, I've never sold anything, so can you call yourself a professional if you never made money off your art? Whatever, it's semantics, whatever you want to say. And so today I'm going to give you a chapter of my book. It's a short one, which, yeah, I, I chose a short one on purpose because I have a lot of problem with reading narration, dictating my own writing, reading a book myself. I have a problem with it reading out loud. And I said many times I want to do an audio book, so maybe this will help me kind of establish a process of how to pronounce stuff and how to be clear and how to have a likable voice. I don't know all the tricks of the trade. Voice actors, what they do, they drink tea with chamomile and other stuff. Like I've heard apples are actually good before singers go on stage to eat an apple or something. So this album's called Animated Eden. Most of them are written in 2020 or a little bit after 2020. I might have went back in time and picked some music from other albums and then added it to this because I do that a lot as well. And I'm gonna read this chapter. I'll read the preface, which is only about 2.5 pages, and then I'll read the lyrics to the 8 songs the best I can. I almost feel like I have to use a different voice when I'm reading the narration and when I'm reading the lyrics. And I'll get into each preface I write for each of these 54 albums in my book. I wanted to put some humor and stuff too, because I have a weird sense of humor. I think like so I wanted to have comic relief, plenty of that stuff, because I don't take myself seriously. Like I'd rather be called like a happy idiot than some pretentious like messiah complex dude. So I much prefer being a happy idiot, which is kind of why The Idiot's one of my favorite books. The Idiot by Dostoevsky became one of my favorite books. The Happy Idiot is just it's a good way to approach art sometimes to get rid of your ego and your pretentiousness because yeah, you try to put that aside and just write something that comes to you naturally, but inevitably you're going to put some of that bullshit in there, fakeness and phoniness because you want to present a certain side of yourself or a certain artistic, mysterious quality. Ooh, I'm a poet, like that type of thing. Marketing is very hard because I said my only purpose is to make cool shit. Like I don't have an artistic ego, man. Like I really believe that I don't. Like I just want to make cool shit, and hopefully some people will like it. That's all. And so I chose Animated Eden because it does have a funny concept to it that's different than some of the other darker ones that I wrote about COVID and stuff. So I'll read it now. I'm only doing this one time. We're only doing it once, like that Bill O'Reilly thing. We're doing it live, and hopefully I get through this quickly without making too many mistakes. It's kind of like when I cover a song or I do my other series, and if I make a mistake, whatever, like this is kind of like a practice for me. But I'm kind of picturing myself reading this chapter in front of like a room of people, like people do at book readings and stuff. So I have it on my tablet. It's only about 2 or 3 pages, and all right, I'll just start it now. Animated Eden. This album contains fairly new songs composed between 2020 and 2021, when my creative brainwaves were functioning at an extremely high rate. The only real concept was to try to form songs while watching old cartoons from the 80s and 90s, which kind of became my place of zen at that time to escape from my mental turmoil. I was really into shoegaze music during this period as well, especially Slowdive's 1995 album Pygmalion. So this probably came forth in both the atmosphere and song structures. I often include lyrics in each chapter of either my own lyrics, like little bits and pieces of some of my song lyrics, or I just mentioned Slow Dive, Pygmalion. So I included two short lyrics into into the light of mine, inside I fall. And that's from Slow Dive, Ruti, from the 1995 album Pygmalion, which is one of my favorite ambient, shoegazy, awesome album. This is also one of the wordiest albums I've ever created. So maybe I was becoming more comfortable as a lyricist when I began editing these tracks back in 2022. Hopefully, it isn't my most pretentious, long winded, or redundant album as well, as I admit a lot of the themes post 2020 do get a bit repetitive and grim. Most of the verses would feature spoken word delivery, at least that's how I hear it at the moment. So maybe I was also starting to better understand how to get my thoughts out without having to sing any actual melodies. As a conceptual device, Animated Eden generally represents the metaphysical garden inside each of us that needs to be tended with love and self forgiveness from time to time in order to keep our physical and mental well being strong and evolving. In my case, at that moment in time, I was relying on music and the nostalgia of Saturday morning cartoons to get me through some anxiety, insomnia, and paranoia. But the form of healing can be whatever you require to get you through those moments of doubt, frustration, and hopelessness. All right, now we get to more funny stuff. I often imagine what life would be like if we lived like cartoons. Would we still glorify and romanticize war if our bodies were indestructible like Wile E. Coyote? Would we be so quick to distrust those of other cultures or nationalities if we were mutant turtle outcasts or equally eccentric robots in disguise? And if He Man existed in today's world, would he have been forced to change his name to he, she, or they man? If I could exist as any cartoon character, I would probably pick Inspector Gadget, as he seemed like the coolest, luckiest, and most caring idiot, excuse me, and most caring idiot of all time. He always put the safety of his family first, found inexplicable ways to cheat death, and had his own fucking helicopter attached to his head, which would come in handy if he ever wanted to avoid an awkward social encounter. He's also been somewhat of a mentor and spiritual guide to me whenever I struggle to negotiate life's more complicated terrains. This is a lyric from one of my songs, Animated Eden Part 1. What are the chances that we are really alive at this moment, together in a trance? And continuing, when I read Dostoevsky's The Idiot around 2020, I would often picture Inspector Gadget as the main idiot character. This absurd exercise helped me get through some of the more dense sections, as a few characters had multiple complex Russian names, which often compelled me to give up on reading any further. It became an incredibly effective method to improve my comprehension, as I thoroughly enjoyed following the protagonist's plunge into madness with Gadget on the brain, especially since I was going through some of the weirdest moments of my life around that time. This whimsical personal anecdote, which might not be completely true, demonstrates the power of nostalgia in the most illuminating fashion, as I might have just given up on the classic novel within the first 20 pages if my loyal childhood animated companion didn't come along for the ride. Plus, picturing Inspector Gadget going through a complete mental breakdown and ending up in an asylum, sorry for the spoilers if you plan on reading the book one day, made me want to write an episode of fan fiction, blending Dostoevsky's quest to depict the most beautiful, innocent human with the fantastical spirit of Inspector Gadget's animated universe. Let us also remember that Brain and Penny were actually the true heroes of that cartoon, as Inspector Gadget would not have lasted a day on his many secret missions if they didn't constantly have his back. This fact powerfully showcases the natural symbiosis between man and dog, as well as the importance of encouraging a child's independence. As Penny constantly strived to save her bumbling secret agent uncle from the vile schemes of Dr. Claw, she was being molded into a well rounded, capable citizen ready to traverse life's many trials with confidence and grace. This is another quote or a lyric from my song Animated Eden Part 2. Tracked every thought, now wards of the state. So I put little lyrics in between just to break up some of the passages. I'll just say really quickly that one of my biggest problems with writing was, excuse me, was the transitions. It took me a long time to manage how to go from point to point in like a organized fashion. And weirdly, one of the things that helped me was pretending that I was speaking like a lawyer. The show Better Call Saul is one of my favorite shows, and I watched it like a binge over a couple of weeks. I binged the whole thing every season, and the way he naturally speaks as a lawyer, it kind of helps me when I try to. I'm not writing a legal argument here, but Better Call Saul, the way they write the dialogue and the way he would give some of his long-winded legal summaries and stuff. I love that show. That's one of my favorite shows. That kind of helped me when I was forming transitions and getting my thoughts out to make it easier for people to read and not be a scrambled brain like I'm doing right now. Yeah, there's only like two more paragraphs. Inspector Gadget also embraced technology to enhance his abilities in the pursuit of peace and justice, which is something I've learned to accept in today's tech obsessed society. Although modern tech sometimes limits our privacy and leads to some shady, dehumanizing mentalities, the connective benefits and convenience probably outweigh all the conspiratorial rants I spew onto these pages. So maybe I won't be surrendering completely to my paranoid notions of computational supremacy. Even if some of my fears concerning high tech advancements turn out to contain a smidgen of validity, I don't think robots will kill us all off anytime soon or take all of our jobs, as who will be left to read and write all those clickbait articles about the eventual AI takeover? As you likely realize by now, well, you haven't read my book, so you ignore that. I've experienced numerous moments of frustration and disgust, many of my own doing, regarding this digital age and its many devices, and I still maintain that social media is a societal cancer. But I also realize that these are merely tools for us to decide how to implement. I'm not quite sure if this should make you feel less threatened by tech or not, since many of us inevitably get into trouble when playing with our new gadgets, just like our good inspector often would. Anyway, whenever you go down one of those delusional rabbit holes about the doom of the impending technological singularity, just remind yourself that Inspector Gadget has already proven that man and machine can merge into a somewhat peaceful amalgamation while also managing to thwart Dr. Claw with the help of a little human child and an always dependable doggo. So, this is one of my shorter ones. That's it. I feel like if I was doing an audiobook, I would have to do this like all day, man. You almost have to like know the words before you read them so it comes out more natural. And the way I'm reading it, I don't think it's as captivating to hold people's interest. But I'll listen to this later. Maybe I'll have a different opinion when I actually hear myself because it's weird to hear your own voice, I guess. Am I speaking too fakely? Am I speaking, I don't know, too much of like hissing in my like I do that a lot. My sh's, my ch's. I'm trying like I have to go back to like my trailer in grade school and go back to hooked on phonics again. I'm not making fun of it. Like I went through that shit, so I'm allowed to make fun of myself, right? But I don't know. I'm gonna have to work on this. I picked this chapter because I knew I was gonna mess up and not be. This is not how my audiobook would be. I would have to practice this all day, like, and it's not something I'm looking forward to. Hopefully, I can get better at it. I've read my book. I have like 200 pages left to edit. I did 100 pages last night. I've read my entire book at least 6 times. So these chapters are familiar to me. Some of the phrases and the way I write is familiar to me because I wrote this stuff and I edited it at least 5 or 6 times now. Actually, more because this used to be an individual songbook before I turned it into the anthology. So I've probably read this chapter over 10 times or more, like editing and reading it. But it's tougher when you read it out loud. My voice inside, my inner voice is like peaceful and calm. But when you have to pronounce it, I don't know, you get a little bit like a lump in your throat and you get more nervous about it. So at the end of each preface of these 54 chapters, I usually, well, I always end with a quote from somebody that I respect, either a musician, writer, um, or who else, poets, a song lyric that fits the theme of my album. I don't want to ruin everything, so I'm not going to include that. In this chapter, I also make a list of my top 10 children's cartoons from the 80s and 90s when I used to watch Saturday morning cartoons. And then I listed my top 10 cartoons for adults, like Rick and Morty and stuff, Beavis and Butthead. I don't want to ruin it, so I'm not going to read that right now. But you can go on my Spotify playlist, and I made a playlist of all the theme songs of my favorite cartoons since I was a kid. So this was actually a fun chapter for me. Um, so once you get to the end of the preface, then you get to the lyrics of the songs. And again, originally, when I had the idea for this book, it was just going to be the lyrics and nothing else. But I figured it was too boring, and people want to know. People still don't know who I am. So writing the preface at least gives a little bit about my personality and stuff. So I'm going to go through the 8 songs. Some of them are pretty short, so this won't take that long. There's 8 songs on this album. There is music. I've never actually got my guitar and like composed it yet, but a lot of these I have demo recordings, a general framework already of how the melodies go. And you'll when you read my lyrics for all these 54 albums, for some reason I hate choruses. Like I don't like choruses. I'm not writing pop songs or love songs or ballads. So my style is kind of different. I got verses, 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 and maybe I'll throw in like 2 or 3 words of a chorus, very short, because my ideal chorus is just for music to take over with no words. Like that's what I like. I'll do some verses with my poetry, and then the chorus is just music, a music break would serve as the chorus. A lot of my songs are like that. So I'm just going to read this as poetry. I'm not going to try to sing these or anything. The first song is called The Sum. Drifting stardust, highly coercive. Lost status in focus, nights corrosive. 10 more minutes off the horizon, sending down dreams of heavenly love. 10 more minutes crawled back in the flames, reaching out an infinite hand. Then the sky lit up just across the street in my head. Beyond the grief, colors streaming from the dawning. 5 more minutes, then I'll be naked and famous. Forget my name, my face, my body, and limits. 5 more minutes, then I'll be locked in their crosshairs. Peace and love, peace and love, numbed and conditioned. Tormented sleep, slaying delusions, tragic heights, not coming down for reunion. 10 long years and a guardian angel. Should have wasted that night masked disloyal. 10 long years, splinters of danger. Wash my hands, my chase, my fortune and tongue, with no reason or sum. So those are 3 verses. I read it all together, but ideally between those 3 verses, this is one of my more wordy songs on this. There would be a music break in between or some kind of, to split it up, because I'm reading it like poetry, but these are songs that would have melodies and music. Song number 2 is called When Tomorrow Breaks, and this one does have a short chorus. But I'm just going to read the whole thing. Pins and needles scammed, forgot how this began. Is it better to sink this far and erase ego's demands? Wired inside your heart, unfamiliar with the cost, consuming expirations, aging by the nines. What tomorrow repeats, why tomorrow wakes, when tomorrow breaks. Wake up, face the bug, saved by cursed decree, just enough air to breathe, blinds to starve the sun. So that one's much shorter. That's more of my style, to have minimal lyrics like that. But sometimes they come out like the first song, which was kind of wordier than anything else. This is song number 3. It's called March of Ants. Fallen but lacked potential. This one's actually tough because I hear the vocal melody in my head, because it goes like fallen but lacked potential. Dun, 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 dun. Boot love, leg tension, and a cut commitment. It's kind of weird when I read these because I'm reading it as poetry, but I hear that some of them have more memorable vocal melodies than other ones. If I was going to pick a song from this album to do for my anatomy of a song, I'd probably pick this one because the vocal melodies like in my head already, but more than the other ones. Like I have demos for all of these, but this one probably is more of a catchier melody, I guess. So this is called March Advance. Fallen but lacks potential, bootleg tension, and a cut commitment. Rewarding but a stuck connection, signs in blood to march the misled. Rewarded, venerated sky to crawl, every sense sold in secret. Crumbling just a route to venture, ration lapse of a riled redemption. So yeah, they're very minimal lyrics for a lot of these songs. The next one is called Animated Eden Part 1, and I already used one line of this already. Animated miles, you'll see the curtains rise, naturalized insurgency of the life uncompromised, renovated rays, desperate deliveries, elevated sight, better offered to the sea. What are the chances that we're all truly alive at this moment, together in a trance, ghost among the wrath, automatic audience, or the monolith's last stand breeds the singularity to test the contradiction? So that one's pretty short as well. Like maybe that was another reason where I became motivated to write all these prefaces, which was more of a uh, the real struggle was writing the prefaces because that's where you have to get the grammar correct. How many times I was like using Google as a thesaurus. What's another word for amazing? Because I say certain words over and over again. So yeah, I was thinking months ago if I was writing this book in the 60s or 50s before the internet and computers, and I had to use a typewriter, and I had to use like, well, they had dictionaries and thesauruses, but like through a lot of my initial writing process, every 5 minutes I'm on Google, what's another word or thesaurus for this word. So yeah, we're lucky. Like I even talk shit about technology in this preface a little, speaking of Inspector Gadget and stuff. But if I had to use a typewriter to write this book, it would take me like the rest of my life, dude. It would take me the rest of my life. Like it would take me nonstop. Like because writing on a typewriter, like every time you make a mistake, you have to like white it out and stuff. Like, I vaguely remember that from grade school a little bit. We had a word processor, I think, at school and in my parents' house. I think we had like a typewriter, and the school I went to, we had a computer class, but it was still like old school Commodore computers. We're playing like Oregon Trail and shit like that. It was just the beginning of that computer age, I guess. That's probably like in I don't know fifth, sixth grade, and they started bringing in all those computers and stuff. But I'm going off on a tangent here. That does kind of relate to this album though. How you come to peace with technology and whatever the tools are, the devices are, it's up to the people how to use these things. So it's always people. It's not, you can't blame the tools. I'm not going to go into the gun thing. Like, guns don't kill people. I'm not going to go into that. But in terms of technology and social media, even though I called it a cancer and I'm using social media right now to get this out to the public, if anyone ever watches this. So I'm full of contradictions. I'm aware of that. But even social media, it's just about how you use it and what you use it for. And I talk about that a lot throughout a lot of my chapters. And I'll get back to these last songs. This is called Summer Heathens. It's pretty short. Summer weakening, quick to find a reason. Time sown. Lightning healing, craze of the season. Time owed, time owed. Run interference in the age of allegiance. Eden restricted to inspect the omissions. Stolen Sisyphus, fantasy upgraded, time lulled, time lulled. Yeah, I'll get through these last ones quickly. This is called Asbury. Fatal poses, two on the nose. Karma crept off the coast. Seas unchained, used and blistered. Thunder then thieving. Failure hard to sell. Trip in the fall. Waves constricted, frayed tradition. Signals frozen, holy rollers. Inflate the symptoms, denied and entwined. All right, just a couple more here. Another Outcast song, Serendipity of a Tempest, Paralyzed, Oblivious, trauma in the air ducts, abandoned to the obvious, to bleed as lifelines, no such thing as chance, sage of the season, it speaks in every tongue, pulses underfed, dopamine adrift, tormenting hidden light for another outcast song. And there's three more. This is called Cleanse. Time to cleanse, can you entertain? Salvage fools, warped and vulnerable. Time delayed for the sanctity. Risk the thought like a diamond's dust. Monkey in the middle, force fed in their core. Crisis at the finish, to sink the animal. Time contrived to free the spree. A fervent binge, hero to the forgery. Sink the animal, sink the animal. That's the outro of the song. So usually when I put an outro, it means there's just going to be a long, like no wave type of jam, and either screaming that last part like over and over again, sink the animal, sink the something is in my head like that probably. I'll be honest, I forget some of these melodies. Like I've over 400, close to 500 songs. Like I don't remember how each one goes, but certain ones I'll read it and I'll know the melody automatically. All right, so this one's called Animated Eden Part 2. The center of the gun, gloss of the cunt, figures on the cards for pity or praise, carved the review with pieces unglued, doctors of fate, and now all they know, animated silence, animated sparks, animated ransom, animated scars, tracked every thought, now wards of the state, in an adventurous cage, the last ones to know. All right, this is the last one. I am a big proponent of song order, so just as important as my songwriting and melodies and creative way of that I approach the structure of a song. When I make a concept album, I want it to flow like really well. I think that's important for a lot of artists. So when I pick an opener and a closer, like I really spend time to see how these affect the mood of the album. Does this closing song bring a catharsis? Does it bring it to some kind of an end? Or sometimes you just know it's a closing song or it's a good opening song. This is called Back to the Garden. Back to the garden, spine in your hands, view of the promise, permanence planned. Back to the garden, rite of decay, cruelty elected, instinctively praised. Back to the garden, intelligence wormed, familiar confessions, sketch of the soul. So again, that's a very short song. It could go on for 5, 6 minutes, but it's mostly an instrumental because there's only three verses, no chorus, no bridge or anything. Which a lot of times when I'm jamming initially, I'm not thinking of lyrics or vocal melodies. I just want to come up with cool rhythms on my acoustic, something that sparks my interest. The rhythm, I don't know, just the cool chord progression, and then whatever words I come up with later. I don't even know what half the stuff means. I went through this already. Maybe Back to the Garden. Well, I'm speaking of Animated Eden, like uh, because that was like my Zen place, was watching cartoons back then. But maybe the garden means the Magic Gardens in Philadelphia because I owe them so much of my progress to write this book. Without the Magic Gardens in Philadelphia, yeah, it would have been a different experience for me. And even though it wasn't easy to turn my photographs into album covers, like at least I had something to start with. I would have had to have a totally different approach. I don't know. I would have had to just go around and take random pictures of stuff, I guess. But So that's how my book flows. My anthology book, it flows like this. And some of the prefaces are longer. As I was editing my book in February and March, sometimes I feel like I needed to add something, so I would put updates as well. And I would put the date that I updated it. So there's some newer things that popped up in my head as well throughout this book. Some of them are funny, some of them get kind of serious. Yeah, I get into politics, I get into religion, but I'm not really biased. I'm just speaking of my own personal experiences when it comes to politics in the United States or religion or stuff like that. I'm just talking about all the stuff that have affected me internally and how I kind of deal with all the information overload, which I talk about as well. Um, there is kind of an information overload syndrome when you wake up and instantly check your devices for whatever, and throughout the day, like I don't know if it's really healthy all the time to do that. Like I'll go back to the Black Mirror stuff. Like, there's an episode of Black Mirror where I forget the guy's name. He's like a tech billionaire type of character, and he has to escape to some hideaway and lock his phone and all his devices so he's not tempted to use them. I feel like everyone needs to do that. Like, after I'm done with this, I might disappear from the internet for a month or so, whether I cancel my internet or just have the discipline not to go on it as soon as I wake up. And maybe I'll just spend a month like I was a kid in the 90s again with no internet and see how I spend my time. Maybe I'll exercise now and do other stuff and just read all the Kindle books that I've had that I kept procrastinating. That would probably take me years to read everything I want to read. So there's other things I can do without being addicted to digital stuff, internet. Like, is it really that hard to? It's like people are addicted to caffeine and they quit drinking coffee. For the next couple days, they get headaches and stuff because your body's craving that caffeine. And the internet is a drug, man. It has an effect on your psychological state. Like it's a vague thing to say the internet, but maybe more specifically social media and I don't know. I guess just social media really. But the internet is kind of a drug like that, where you get addicted to screens, you get addicted to your digital identities and stuff, and it's weird. I don't know how people will look back. Like if people look at when radio first started, the war of the worlds, and like how you could cause panic, hysteria because of the new radio technology, and then television. Nixon versus Kennedy. Like, that was what the first televised debate, maybe presidential debate, and the power of seeing stuff. Myself, when I first started my YouTube channel, I didn't want to take videos of myself. I was just making audio stuff and going that direction. And then eventually I'm like, well, it's actually easier to do it like this. So that was one of my main motivations. I don't really have to edit too much later. And then the internet came in what the 90s, I guess. America Online, Netscape, and all that stuff. And the internet came in everyone's home. And I don't know, people who study this stuff, psychological factors of having the internet control so much of your life, your phone, your other devices. Like right now, I'm speaking into a tablet, taking this video, I'm reading from a tablet, and I'm looking at my laptop. There's three screens on my face right now. And I'm already at 45 minutes. I don't want to go into a long rant, but there is a book called Cobalt Red. Siddharth Kara, I think, is the author, and I speak about it in the book. I learned of him on the Joe Rogan podcast, and yesterday I mentioned how I'm conflicted with Spotify, and maybe Spotify doesn't treat artists in the best way, which I'm not sure about. I hear people talking just from what the internet tells me. I don't really know what's real anymore when it comes to stuff like that. It's hard to decipher each method of propaganda. But Siddharth Kara, sorry if I'm saying your name incorrectly. I'll put a link to his book in the description. And I didn't read this book. I've kind of had ADD with reading while I'm writing and editing my book. I haven't really read anything else for the last like 5 months. And he wrote a book about how a lot of the batteries, the cobalt that's mined to make these batteries for stuff, supposedly come from, I think, the Congo, or yeah, I forget, but it's a region of Africa where it's still like slave labor, man. Like he's when he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, he said he went there and he saw it. He took video of it. There's like children in the mines digging for this stuff, and it makes you feel shitty. Like, how do I know that some kid didn't have some part in digging in a mine all day, getting like $1 a day for my tablet? The battery I'm using is like a product of slave labor. Like that's a guilt trip you don't want to deal with. And it's like, well, what's the remedy? Do I just smash all these things and be like, yeah, fuck you, capitalism, fuck you, consumerism? Everyone in the world is just gonna smash their phones in unison and be like, yeah, now we're good people. Why can't they just treat their workers well? Like, why can't that be the option if people want to? Well, I guess nobody wants to work in a mine, but if that's your reality, at least treat people well and pay people fairly. Make people, I don't know, it's tough to talk about these things. I haven't read the book and the whole history of colonialism and stuff. It's tough to to imagine that this stuff's still going on today, but I'm sure it is in other industries too. So why did I talk about this? I don't remember. I was talking about digital technology and how screens are like a part of my life so much, and another love hate relationship. Like I want to be able to put this stuff out there without these devices and without the internet and stuff, but there's a negative side to it that kind of fucks up my head. I think about that stuff like all the time, and I don't know. I have to read the book and really get more knowledge about it because I don't know. It's good. The more attention that's brought to stuff like that, it can only improve things, right? Like if the world sees this shit, and every time you put your phone on, you're imagining that some kid was like used as slave labor to construct your tablet or some shit. Yeah, it'll fuck with your head and good. There should be like a guilt trip if that's the truth and everything. And I'm always making sports metaphors. Like supposedly Jalen Hurts, after they lost the Super Bowl to the Chiefs the first time, on his phone, like he had a picture of the orange confetti that the Chiefs were celebrating and after they beat the Eagles and whatever year that was. And he would look at that every day as like a motivating thing. And I kind of had that thought, like if people open their phones and it was like one of these workers that has to work in these cobalt mines and breathe in all the hazardous stuff and they don't have worker rights, they don't have proper conditions of working, and they get paid next to nothing. If you had to see those people's faces looking at you, like just giving you the finger, because they deserve to do that to us if that's what it really is. Like, how do I know where my battery came from? How am I supposed to find this out? Like, it's a fucked up thing. I could talk about this for longer, but I'll just stop it here, I guess. But yeah, if that was in everyone's reality every day, and it would probably put pressure on all these big tech companies to stop pretending they don't know about this stuff, and it would put pressure just on the people there in Africa to stop doing shit like that. But I don't know, man. It's one of those things where it's like, if you think about it for too long, it just makes you feel like such a shitty person. And it does make you want to get rid of your shit. If that's what, if 10, 20 years from now, someone's going to make a documentary saying, well, 75% of your devices, the batteries came from slave labor in Africa. Like, someone will make that documentary 10, 20 years from now, after all those people made their money and they cashed out and they're long gone, or they don't give a fuck about it anymore. And someone will make a documentary like the dude who made Super Size Me or Michael Moore stuff. Someone's going to make a documentary about that, and it'll make everyone feel shitty as they're watching it on their tablets. It's a fucking weird Black Mirror like experience, man. I'm going way off on some tangent here. I might have to edit some of this stuff, but hopefully, the point of this was just to talk about how my chapters go in my book, and there's other parts too. Like I talked about, I have 18 to 20 playlist, and like my favorite guitarist, my favorite shoegaze albums, my favorite jazz albums, classical, heavy metal, punk albums, hip hop albums, my favorite guitarist, my favorite female singers. Did I say that? My favorite stream of consciousness songs. And I made a lot of lists to try to, well, it's good to pay thanks, to give thanks to all these artists and direct people to these artists that have have inspired me since, you know, the 90s, I guess. But a lot of these artists are from the 60s and maybe even the 50s, like Les Paul and Mary Ford. Les Paul, I put in my guitarist list. He's one of the best guitarists. Berlioz, Symphonie Fantastique, that's from like 1830. So I tried to be as thorough as possible with everything that's affected my musical life or any kind of art that's helped me develop into this over the last 20, 30 years. And yeah, my book is pretty much set up like that. It's got 54 chapters like this one, the preface, then the song lyrics, maybe some other stuff mixed in there. And I'm really not trying to take myself all that seriously with this book. The title of the book, again, if this is the first time you watched my video, it's called The Hypothetical Poet: My Life and Lyrics So Far from 2006 to 2024. And I titled it that because I don't consider myself to be a poet, not really. I don't even know what that really means. Like, I'd rather just term myself a songwriter because these are songs more than poems. When I'm reading my lyrics in an audio book, if I do get to that point, which I really want to, number one, it could help people who are blind or just don't like reading. Number two, it can make me more money if I do an audiobook. I like audiobooks. I listened to that Cobalt Red one, some of it at least. And but anyway, when I'm reciting my song lyrics, I'm going to read them as poetry like I did today and not try to sing them. That's a different step of this process. If I get to that point, then I can make the vocal melodies and whatever, or other people can interpret my songs how they want to do it. And I'm like at an hour. I've been rambling now for like 20 minutes. Um, that's it. I'll keep doing videos until Thursday, and the rest will just be like other inspirations, more albums. I picked 10 more records to share. I picked 5 books that kind of helped me write this book, or just some of my favorite books in general, and some more music that's inspired me. Hopefully, when I rewatch this video, like I can kind of critique myself and see what I'm doing wrong and how I can get better pronouncing my words and stuff like that. And yeah, that's it. Hopefully, it wasn't too terrible. At least I hope you can get an idea of what reading my book would be like. And if I do get to that point where I can make a professional sounding audiobook, I hope it can be pleasing to people to listen to, because I don't want to use AI to do it. I said that yesterday, that maybe I'll just use an AI program to read my book, and that's how I'll release my audiobook. But I don't want to do that. I feel like it's not. I feel like it's a baseball player like taking steroids. It's not a fair way to do it, or I'm cheating. I feel like I'm cheating by using artificial intelligence to read my book for me. Uh, but I'll think about it later, I guess. But yeah, that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and it gave you some idea of what my reading my book would be like.